Hi there. This is Gunner's Range and I'm Dudley. I wanted to bring another video to you today. And the title of this video is just exactly what is a game changer. And of course, I'm talking about the Russo-Ukrainian war and the many times we've heard comments made, well, this is not a game changer. So let's talk about that just a little bit. So we can go back to the beginning of this war in February of 2022. And from the beginning, the Ukrainians have asked for and received here and there, dribbled in from the West, weapons. You know, they asked for artillery. And the West complied and gave them artillery. But of course, the West, everyone said, well, that's not a game changer, though. Well, then, you know, as the war went on and Ukrainians had some success, in fact, if the West had given them what they wanted in 2022, this war would be over. I mean, Ukrainians at the end of 2022 practically kicked the Russians out of the country. If only the West had responded to the needs, things they asked for, war would be over already. And a lot of innocent people would still be alive, and there's no question about it. And of course, after the artillery, you know, they also asked for armored vehicles, tanks, armored fighting vehicles, personnel carriers. And just as an aside, there is a big difference between what's called an infantry fighting vehicle and just a personnel carrier. An armored personnel carrier is like, it's a taxi. It's just going to take troops somewhere, it's going to drop them off. It's really not capable of doing anything but a close-in defense of itself, because usually they're only armed with heavy machine guns or some kind of light cannon. So an armored personnel carrier gives some protection to the infantry, but it's just a taxi. An infantry fighting vehicle, on the other hand, has been designed and developed to not only deliver the infantry, but also to be able to defend itself against the enemy. And this is usually done in the form of heavier automatic cannons like the Bradley's 25 millimeter chain gun, and also anti-tank guided missiles. Now, the first time we ever saw this were BMPs, going back into the 70s when the Israeli war, the 73 Yom Kippur War, when the Egyptians appeared on the battlefield with BMPs, which had the ability not only to deliver the infantry, but also to defend itself. That it was armed, were armed at that time with a 75 millimeter cannon or 77 millimeter cannon. Now they're and an anti-tank guided missile. In that case, it was the AT-3 Sagger. Well, now they've gone way far ahead. They're using chain guns and much better anti-tank guided missiles. And also, the BMP and the Bradley and the other infantry fighting vehicles that have followed also had ports for firing from. This enabled, in the case of an assault in which you had overrun the enemy, it allowed the IFV to continue to advance into the enemy's rear, allowing the infantry in the vehicle itself to continue to fire as they're overrunning the target. So that's the difference. IFV is supposed to be able to take care of itself, and that has been seen. Everyone's seen it. The Bradley IFV infantry fighting vehicle has practically reached a mythical proportions in Ukraine, because it has shown itself to be able to deliver infantry and defend itself even against the best Russian tanks. We even have videos we've seen where the Bradleys have disabled the Russian T-90M, which Putin says is the best tank in the world. Point is, though, the Bradley has shown and is shining. It's a shining example of an infantry fighting vehicle. So that's the basic difference between the APC and an IFV, infantry fighting vehicle. But continuing on, but of course, here we go back into the kicker. Well, when the U.S. delivered it, and the Germans gave the Martyr, and they received some other IFVs from the other NATO countries, and in every case, you heard the experts, they say, well, it's not a game changer. And then, of course, they received the Abrams tank, they received the Challengers, they received the Leopard tanks, and always the same thing. Well, it's not a game changer. And then as time came on, they wanted the long-range missiles, which the U.S. finally, got around to giving them, the ATACMS. Shamefully, however, the U.S. still has not given the Ukrainians permission yet to attack into Russia with them, which is shameful in my opinion. But be that as it may, in every case, the experts all say, well, this isn't a game changer. Well, what is a game changer? I mean, if you listen to them, well, nothing's a game changer. And then finally, of course, the latest thing, the F-16. Well, and the same thing, what's everyone say? Well, it's not a game changer. Well, what is a game changer? Well, the fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, it's all of that together. You see, each of those individual things, those individual weapons, the artillery, the air defense, the armored vehicles, the tanks, the long-range wheels, none of those things by themselves are a game changer. But you have to look at the sum of the whole. If you put all of that together, the game has changed. And as you can see from the recent Ukrainian invasion of Russia into the Kursk Oblast, the game has changed a lot. So none of those things individually are game changer, but all these things together, and now also some of the allies are starting to say, hey, you can use our weapons to attack into Russia. So basically the U.S. is still holding back, and with the Brits, because the Brits are they have to go along with the U.S. on that. So when you look at all that stuff, though, that's the game changer. It's everything, all of these things. Folks, if you don't realize, everyone, the news, the experts, you keep reading, blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you, the Ukrainians are on the verge of winning this war. If the United States will give them a free hand and let them start attacking into Russia with the JDAMs, the ATACMS, these other weapons, Ukraine can win this war. I mean, we're now February 22. Where are we? September 24. And the Russians, after 2.5 years, still haven't captured Ukraine. Now, when they invaded originally, it was like, 3 days. This baby's over in 3 days. We'll mop up after that. And the CIA was out there planning to help the Ukrainians begin guerrilla warfare. And that's a fact. Well, here we are 2.5 years later. And the Russians, yes, they've made advances. They've gotten into eastern Ukraine. But you know what? The Russians can't win. At this point, the Russians are no longer capable of winning this war with what they have. Short of using nukes, which they might, but that is a risk. Short of using nukes, the Russians no longer have the capability to win this war. When you look at the casualties, right now, the estimates are over 600,000 Russians killed and wounded. I know sometimes Ukrainians have a tendency to call them all killed. No, that's not the case. Killed and wounded. So 600,000. I mean, the Russians haven't lost that many people since World War II. And so the fact is, everything that's been given to Ukraine has changed the game. That's a fact. You can disagree with me, but you got to look at the results. It's all about believe whatever you want, but look at the results. Yes, the Russians are still making some advances, and look at what it's costing them, though. On average, they're losing 1,000 men a day. I mean, even Russia can't go on forever at that rate, especially when Russian men are deserting the country like rats from a sinking ship. So the fact is, the Russians are no longer capable of winning. They can't win this war. The best they can hope for is to get a political victory in negotiations. But that's also why Ukraine continues to ask for this help, because Ukraine understands that's what's at stake. The Russians now would be hopeful, just get some negotiations and give us Luhansk and Donetsk and we'll be happy. No, they won't be happy. If they get Donetsk, Luhansk in a couple of years, we'll be looking at the same thing all over again. And we'll be going through this same pointless exercise of what the Ukrainians can use to defend themselves. Anyway, all right, I'm going way off track here. But the point is this: what is a game changer? It's everything that Ukrainians have received. The game has changed. The Ukrainians are no longer, even though I know their morale's hurting that thing, they're still, but you know what? The Russians can't win. The Russians at this point cannot win the war. And I don't claim to be an expert, but people who know better than I, such as General Hodges, General Petraeus, and some of the others, they say Russians can't win. The best the Russians can hope for is a political solution. So the answer to the question of what is a game changer? Well, I think my answer is as good as anyone's. All of this put together has changed the game. Ukraine can win the war. And so with that, I'll take my leave, but I hope you enjoyed the video. Semper Fidelis. Take care, and God bless you.